Well, the money system is our technical obstacle to survival. As far as I can see, it's mathematically dependent on continuous growth. So, you know, we cannot have a conservation or shrinkage economy deliberately, say, in order to save the earth, without everybody losing their homes to the banks through foreclosure, because that's how the money system's designed. Growth is the only way it works. And so that's why I made the movie. Because I used to be an environmentalist, and I realized that none of those other things can be accomplished while the money system stands as the obstacle. Yeah, I had a couple of advisors who were adamant that there was a big crash coming. I wasn't prescient on my part, but after they told me why, then I understood why. And I made the movie. In 2006, I made the movie with a couple of advisors who didn't agree on things, which is why there's a little contradiction. It's still got the fractional reserve system in it, because one of my advisors was from the United States and insisted that the fractional reserve system was in place. And my advisor was Timothy Madden, who's a Canadian, described as a forensic economist. And I actually made the original Money is Dead in 2002 for him. But it was really amateurish. It was my very first stab at animation and first stab at explaining how the money system works. But somebody saw that one and they wanted to use it, and I was embarrassed by it by then and wanted something better. And so I said, give me 6 months and I'll try to have, because they had an event coming up in June or the end of May, that's right. And they asked me to start on it in January. And at the same time, I was also working for the Canadian Action Party. Well, our government's not very straightforward about what they did. While we're getting the news about the Americans' the original bailout for $700 billion, our government didn't tell anybody about the $125 billion that they bailed our banks out with. And that was all, they bought mortgages off the banks. So they bought the dodgy mortgages off the banks so the banks could create more credit. And I'm not sure how that's worked out, but the government said, oh, that's not rescuing the banks. We just bought mortgages. We have the asset, and the money's gone, and we had the asset as a balance. So it didn't cost us anything.
Yeah.
Which is a smart way to do it, I would say. If you're going to bail out the banks, buying your mortgages straight off is probably the best way to do it. But and our banks have been bailed out before. If you look into certain history online, you'll find out our government's helped out the banks a lot of times when they got into trouble. But essentially, yeah, they're less risky than some of the other banks in the world. That's probably very true. Probably the reason they didn't take it so badly. Well, they could. You know, gold and silver are just another artificial form of money. Then, if we didn't, silver is an industrial metal. I bought some silver back in 2006 myself, thinking the price would go up, and it did. It went from $10, and I bought it up to $50, and then it went back down to 20, where it's pretty much stayed ever since. Those are not my recommended ways of getting out of the problem. I would certainly say if you want to own those things as some kind of protection, I'm not going to advise you against it. But basing the money system on gold and silver is a serious mistake, in my opinion. It's the basic mistake. Basing money, making money a single uniform commodity in limited supply, made valuable by its scarcity, is the cause of our problem. Have to change to money as a promise of something from somebody, payable only in that something. That way we get away from the fixed arithmetic problems that come with money. When debt is only payable in money, the arithmetic quickly becomes impossible. But if debts are payable in goods and services only, then you don't run into the same kind of rigid arithmetic. Well, the U.S. dollar was defined as so many grains of silver from about the 1700s till sometime in the mid 20th century. But none of those things really mean anything. You know, so who's defining silver compared to a loaf of bread or the price of a house? You know, it's just another variable. There is no constant in the world of value. Keep trying to find something that. Well, gee, to be honest, I don't really think humankind is very likely to save itself, to be honest. Like, I think we have to do everything we can, otherwise we're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you ask my honest opinion, I think we're done. And I think we've Easter Islanded ourselves already.
Yeah.
But if that's not the case, then that would be terrible not to do anything just because of that kind of fatalism. So, yeah, capitalism has got to go in its current form, but communism was just as bad. So we're not talking about, they're both materialist, growth-addicted systems. And what we need to be able to do is to shrink our impact on the earth. And we can only do that by taking the same amount of stuff and using it more in a sharing manner, right? I mean, as somebody has pointed out, if you look down a typical American or Canadian suburb, everybody's got a wheelbarrow, everybody's got a ladder, everybody's got all these things they might use once a year or twice a year, right? Yeah. And this oil, you know, oil burnt, all of that just to create stuff. So we live in my own stuff too, and I live in my own house out in the woods. I have my own wheelbarrow. In fact, I have two of them. But nonetheless, I think that that's where we're going to be forced to do.
Okay.
I mean, I share things with my neighbors, so we do some of that, but. Do I think it's possible? Well, yeah, we already saw how close we came, and they only saved us from that by putting the taxpayer in debt for bailouts. And then in Cyprus, they actually just took the depositors' money. So basically, the banks just said, we don't owe you that money anymore. And they've already written that into our new the rules in Canada. So the next time this happens, they'll be taking the money out of our bank accounts and just saying they don't owe us. The banks don't owe us that money anymore. Collapse of the economy, that means everything stops working. You mean no food in the stores and no you can't buy gasoline and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I certainly think it's possible. But I think the system tends to be more resilient than a lot of us conceive of it. It's not that, but financially it's actually more precarious than in real life. The real life shortages will all take place slowly, right? As we run out of easy oil, the price of everything goes up because everything's made with oil, indirectly or directly. The price of everything will go up as the oil gets more expensive, and that will slowly throttle the consumer economy we're used to. But you can't count out miraculous technology. Like, I'm not one of these people who think technology can solve every problem, because technology is where we are today, instead of living in a cave and beating animals to death with a club. Right? It's all been technology that put us where we are now. So I do have faith that technology directed in the right direction would be very powerful. While there are countless people in the world that give me hope and all these evidence of this blossoming consciousness, are there enough, and is it already too late, is the question I ask. You know, I think we needed to make this big change 30, 40 years ago when the hippies were first telling us that we needed to make this big change. I think an effort to establish a global hegemony. I mean, Syria is being destabilized by certain forces, you might call them Zionist forces, and I think the same are involved in Ukraine. And the Western media, watching CBC, I just couldn't believe the crap they were telling me, because I also get RT, Russia Today, so I get the news, and you know, I get the one side telling me there's no fascists, and the other side, RT, can give me a complete profile of their people, their fathers, what they did in World War II, what their party's name is, who their deputy is, and shows them beating people up. Whereas the Western media just conflates them all. They're freedom fighters, like the Sandinistas supposedly were. And I mean, it's not the what did they call them now? Jeez, can't even remember. During Reagan's era. Anyhow, yeah, it's all part of one big program, and the economic crisis largely comes from spending on war. But if we used all of our wealth to make ourselves comfortable, nobody would be poor. Look how wealthy we are. Look how much incredible amount of material wealth there is in this planet. That anyone should be poor is ridiculous. It's designed that way, the people who want to be at the top, the psychopaths who run the place. Already in place in terms of the world banking system. You know, the New World Order is not even that new, and essentially once we got a world banking system, now there's some holdouts for the world banking system: Russia, North Korea, Iran, Libya. You know, you can see why they're being taken down, because they're the ones who hold out. I mean, one of the amazing things about Hitler is that originally he was funded by the bankers, and then when he figured out he could create his own money, they turned against him. So all the guys who died in World War II fighting Hitler were fighting a real evil because of the other things he did, but they were also fighting to defend the Rothschild banking system from Hitler. But anyway, there was one thing I wanted. There was one other point I wanted to make. What was I going to? But when you talk about collapse of the economy, have you ever read any of Dmitry Orlov's book, Reinventing Collapse? Dmitry Orlov, O-R-L-O-V. It's a really good book because he lives through the collapse of the Soviet Union, and he's lived in both the Soviet Union and the United States. I think he left Russia when he was 12, but he's been back many times since. And he wrote a very perceptive book about the differences between the Russians and the Americans, and how a collapse, it took 15 years. A similar crash, it'll be 100 times worse because of the way our system is set up, and because of our lack of public infrastructure and all this other kind of stuff, and the direction we're going, just continue to make the end result will be worse. But it's a great book, Dmitry Orlov's book, and you can find stuff by him online. And for him, the way he does it is he's talking about it step by step of what happened in the Soviet Union, and you can judge for yourself what would happen here. Okay, well anyway, nice talking to you, Mike.